What is going on, everybody? It's Nothing But Skills here, and today we're going to be talking about the state of the game that just happened on 26 August. So that was just a day ago. A lot of you have asked me, hey, are you going to do a summary on it? I decided, you know what, let's watch it together. I think it's about 20 minutes, so if I need to cut out some parts, I will, but let's dive into it. It's about to start in just 18 seconds, and I really want to hear what they have to say. I heard this state of the game focused a lot on loot, so rainbow loot, and then also focused on those mod slots. So instead of having to use a red, blue, or yellow, you will no longer have to use that. But let's listen to what they had to say, and then we'll break it down as the state of the game goes on. So it should be starting up now. Let's see what happens.
Hello everyone, and welcome to State of the Game number 168 on the 26th of August. I hope everyone's having a great week so far. We've got a bit of a show for you today, and I want to bring in Nikki. Sorry, Yannick put me off my game. I saw Yannick in chat. I've got Nikki and Johan today to talk about some very exciting things. How's everyone doing? Roll call.
All right.
All good. All good.
Nice. All right, you're coming through loud and clear, and hopefully we have no technical issues today.
Also at the bottom, you see it says new PvE game mode.
We're good.
They're going to be talking about that during the State of the Game, September
I want to start
3rd
with the priority alerts for today, because we talked about it last week. The PS4 blue screens, there was a client patch that went out yesterday on PS4, so those should be fixed now. There are a couple of other edge cases that were fixed in the maintenance yesterday as well. Fixed an issue that caused targets marked with hostile negotiations to receive very high multiplied damage when shooting critical hits at shields. That was fixed. Fixed an issue as well that caused some players to get stuck in an infinite loading screen during the final part of Liberty Island story mode if they interacted with the door while their character fell unconscious. Those are both.
Yes. Just a really quick mention on the... Sorry. Just a really quick mention on PS4 blue screens. Of course, this is meant to reduce the frequency of them. I think that it's very much realistic to assume that they're still going to happen for players. And if we find any other source of these blue screens, we want to fix them as soon as possible. So if you're experiencing any of them, do send us crash reports, etc. Any information you might give us, and we're definitely going to look into them and working to fix as many of them as possible. Because of course, it's not a fun experience to play a game, be in the middle of a mission or raid or what have you, and have a blue screen. So you definitely should see a reduction, and quite a significant one, I hope. But they may still happen, and if you have information, do share it with us. We appreciate it.
So let's take a pause right here. So I did do some research on Twitter. A lot of people who were having those blue screen issues. I've had a couple here and there, but not as many as a lot of the players I've came across, and they said they've had a lot of issues with it recently. And I think after this update, I think a lot of them, it's still early on, but they weren't seeing those blue screens like they were getting before. So hopefully that blue screen issue isn't happening to you, but if it is, let them know it is something they do want to take care of. So let's continue on.
Fantastic. I just want to point out something in chat. So Ripper McGee was saying, these mods might ban you for any constructive criticism. That's not how anything works here. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Just keep it respectful. It's easy to do. If you wouldn't say it to your mother, don't type it in chat. That's usually the rule I go by.
Don't
online.
say it to your mother.
I would feel embarrassed.
Don't type it in chat, boys.
Okay. What else do we have here? Yes. So, TU11 is coming. We don't have a date for you yet, but it is coming very soon. And I kind of want to.
I'm predicting like September, early September, mid-September probably.
Because we've alluded to a bunch of things, but I think it's good to get it out there in a plain format.
So title update 11, new game mode.
It hasn't been officially announced, but you
season 3,
folks have found it, and we've talked about it. But there's a new PvE game mode coming.
Season
mods, 3, and all the things that come
rainbow
with
loot
it are on the way as well, which alludes to
mods.
some new gear. Previous seasons have had new gear. Nikki did spoil for me before that there would be some new gear attached to this PvE game mode.
So we're gonna have new gear mode attached.
Can confirm. There will be basically a third exotic that will be a new crafting quest that is mostly tied to this new game mode.
Okay. I am very aware also that's the Regulus in the new gear thing. It just looks pretty, and we didn't want to spoil. Appearance mods we talked about last week. Rainbow loot improvements will
So we have a new exotic that's gonna be a quest mode. So it's gonna be something like you would have saw with the Regulus if you did the raid, but for this one's gonna be tied to this new PvE mode. That's pretty cool to hear. And then there's also gonna be new gear. So I don't know if that means new high-end gear, new gear sets. Who knows? We'll keep listening, see what we can hear. And then I know they're going to get into the appearance mods, what they talked about last week. That's where if you want to have a wyvern chest, right, the vest, well, you can have that on any piece you want. The only thing you cannot make look like a wyvern chest is the exotic pieces are unique to exotic pieces, but a wyvern can look like the Healer Guard and everything else.
We'll be talking about today, as well as agnostic mods and the changes that have happened there. It's simple but high impact, so we'll talk about those today as well. Okay, so yeah, we've got quite a bit to get through. Johan, can you take us through a bit of what's happening on the bug fixing side with TU11? Obviously, we don't have an exhaustive list today, but where are we at with that?
Yeah, sure. So, as Hamish mentioned, of course, we're still very much working on the build, working to fix as many things as possible, and sure that it's a really good experience when it does come out. But there's a few things that I've seen has been fixed that I know has been talked in the community, and I wanted just to highlight them here. This is no indication of how many bug fixes there will be, or if your issue is not on this list, do not take that as it won't be fixed. This is simply a few things that we already know are fixed and can be shared today. So with that disclaimer in mind, the reports that essentially the striker gear set, you cannot dye the gear on that gear set, that is fixed. So you can now actually do that, which should be a nice surprise for many. There's also an issue with the crafting cost for SMGs. Essentially the polycarbonate cost, which is too high, and it was way above any other weapon type. So that has been fixed. Also fixed an issue that caused players to be unable to fast travel from New York to the Dark Zones, which is also something that we see quite regularly. And of course, there are many more, but it's also just a quick preview of what you can expect in TU11 when it comes out in terms of bug fixes. But for a full list of patch notes, that's going to be a bit closer to the PTS and the update itself. And it should be relatively soonish. Spoiler, but
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it.
That's good news. I mean, I love when we have PTS patch notes and we can really make these
So it looks like
streams
the
about...
PTS should be coming
I
out
like
soon.
reading streams. I personally am totally into it. But we shall see if that's coming. Well, we'll see when that happens.
Remember, you have to
I
be
don't
on
actually know if
PC to
that's,
use the
a
PTS.
next week thing, or the week after, or the week after.
So
We'll take it as it comes. I did actually have a chat to Bruce today, who couldn't join us because, good news, he's super busy making sure that a bunch of these changes make it into TU11. He said that there's buffs to a bunch of weapon types that he's working on, and he was working on some things for Lady Death and also like the firewall armor breaking stuff. He's very busy, so TU11 is going to have a bunch of changes there. And Dakid 1209 is asking about PvP updates. I know Bruce is working on stuff as it pertains to PvP as well. So, yes, TU11 is going to have a button. Gamer Insanity, does Hamish have a blanket hanging up behind him? Yes, it is a blanket. And behind there is some cupboards. Working from home hacks. Okay. Now, we did show last week a graphic that showed our roadmap for State of the Game. Last week we talked about the appearance mods system. I know there are a bunch of people in the community who are excited about that. I saw Kaylee Phoenix tweeting about that today. We today, are going to talk about the rainbow rolls and all that sort of stuff. But we did say that the new PvE game mode we will be talking about next week. So I know people will be asking about that in chat. That's a next week thing. So put it in your calendars. I think it's September 2nd. Yes. Okay, September 2nd is... is the day for the PvE game mode stream.
So next week we'll find out about that PvE game mode.
Nikki,
which people
can you give us a bit of a, before we get into the PowerPoint?
Are naming skyscraper, right? That's what everybody's calling it. I don't know if they've confirmed that name or.
Can you tell us about some of the things that you've been looking back on 10.1 with as it pertains to loot?
Yeah. PowerPoints can only be topped by Excel sheets, right? As a designer, at least. So. Yeah, I just want to say that we hear kind of the sentiment from the community that about bad loot and things might have been degrading since 10.1. So I just want to start off by saying that we have made no changes to the improvements that we did on the roll side, basically the power of items. That is still pretty much the same. And we've done all our simulations again to make sure that that is still accurate. But of course, the simulations are not like a real world live game scenario. So unfortunately, there are a couple of things going on that kind of throw a wrench in this whole better loot proposition that was supposed to come with 10.1. Some of that is presentation, some of that is bugs, and some of that is system improvements that we're working on. And the rainbow loot is one of the things that we'll talk about later. But if we're talking about presentation, that's just a small thing. But if you're trying to judge, like I'm expecting a minimum percentage average on a certain item, there's actually some rounding going on sometimes for stats that have small increments or big increments, I have to say, like very few different values for the entire bar, stuff like crit chance and so on. Okay. So sometimes we kind of adjust the bar to match, what the increment is, and sometimes that goes up, sometimes that goes down. So if you're trying to judge like the power of an item, the UI is not exactly accurate in terms of an exact percentage, because some rounding is going on. Okay. But that shouldn't be like affecting the actual quality of your loot. You're still getting what you were supposed to be getting. The second thing is that we've identified a couple of areas where the content that you're playing seems to be feeding the loot system the wrong information about difficulty. So that means that even though the heroic tier loot is still what it needs to be, for example, playing heroic control points that seem to reset to normal, of course, are not going to give you the heroic loot, because the crate at that point thinks that you're supposed to get normal loot. So that is one example of some content that we're looking into. Another thing is bounties, where we're aware that sometimes you're not getting loot that the bounty is saying that you should get. So we're looking into reports of that and playing the game, and our QC team is also helping out, trying to pinpoint all of these cases. And unfortunately, we have to sometimes go case by case in terms of, hey, what control point is giving an issue, or what mission is giving an issue. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that to try and fix those things. In terms of system improvements, there's actually two things. One of them is the rainbow loot that we'll get to. The other thing is skill tier items. Mm-hmm. So as you know, skill tier is just a fixed value. It's both a min roll and a max roll, basically. It's just fixed. But under the hood, it still rolls like weapon damage would do or armor would do. But of course, then that gets overwritten to a fixed value. So that makes it possible that if that skill tier decided to roll high, you will see lower bars for their two remaining stats, because it's giving you a certain average. But of course, skill tier always appears as the same thing. So that's why you just see as a player two low stats remaining that are not the average of what you're expecting from heroic or other difficulties. So what we're doing is actually excluding skill tier from the rolling. So that is just a fixed stat, and the actual average power will be distributed across the two remaining stats. So that's why especially skill tier items may have been underwhelming, because they are just not assigning their power correctly, which they will do in T11.
Okay.
That's a pretty good fix right there.
That. All right, is it time for us to jump into the PowerPoint?
So did you guys understand that they were talking about the skill tier for skill? Those, like, say if you were looking for a wyvern holster and you wanted to skill, it was rolling that like if it was a percentage, right? Even though you saw so under that, so that's what giving you super low rolls. So you could have like 25% on your two other rolls, which would suck, but you have a maxed out top roll, right? So you could always roll one, but they're gonna like exclude that, so that's always gonna be a fixed roll, and then it should improve those bottom rolls, which for us skill players who like running a lot of skills, that means you're gonna be able to get some really good pieces to complete your skill builds and probably min-max them pretty quick.
Can we
Now they're gonna dive
go to the
into
Sure.
rainbow rolls right now.
Yeah, I can like give an intro to this
Okay,
a bit
cool.
because contrary to what a lot of people believe, rainbow loot has not gotten worse or better between TUs because we actually have no weighing of attributes in the loot system until now. So I cannot argue with your experience. I cannot argue with RNG. But yeah, you're just gonna have to take my word for it that both, like, only the core stat is fixed. The other two attributes are just completely random. And of course, RNG might give you a different impression. But we do know that if you're trying to hunt for this red build, full red build, or a full skill tier build, what you're looking for is items with everything of the same color. And of course, we have made items to have a certain profile, right? Like this is a skill item, this is a offensive item. So we do realize that some of these items need to be, tilted towards more towards that profile. But we also need to take into account the players that go for these kind of hybrid and fringe builds. And some items have actually been set up to be more of a hybrid thing. So we talked about, like, okay, how can we make sure that we find a balance between helping people that want full colored builds and helping, while not kind of making it worse for people that do want kind of more variation in their roles. And of course, recalibration plays a part in that because you're always able to change one thing. So that being said, we can go into the slides and we'll explain what's going to happen.
All right, I think you missed Yannick trolling you in chat.
Oh no!
Can someone time out Yannick, please? That'd be nice. All right.
So here we go, rainbow
favorite
rolls.
part of the show.
Let's see what they're gonna do.
Rainbow loot.
Yeah, I put that in quotation marks because it's not
And
our
I'm gonna tell you
term.
my thoughts on
It's a
rainbow
community term.
loot
So,
after this. in a
but
second.
we're just rolling with it now. No
All
pun
right.
intended.
Take us through it.
Yeah. So here you have the part of the item that we're talking about, right? So the core attribute is a red core weapon damage. I'm going to give this entire example based on a red core, but of course it's also true for yellows and blues. So how it works now, the core attribute is red, and then the first attribute and the second attribute below that are actually completely random. There's no weighing in there. So that means that you can get a rainbow drop that has all three colors. It can have two colors. It can have, one color, and everything is red. But there's no weighing in there, and that's what we're going to change. So if you show the next slide, these are basically the options, right? For the first random attribute, there's 4 attributes per color, so there's 12. So you have, if you go to the next one, you have basically an 8.3% chance of any of these attributes happening, and that means a 33.3% chance of something being of a certain color.
Okay.
So that, again, there's absolutely
Totally
no weighing
random.
in there. So we talked about, okay, if we do add weighing and still want randomness in here and variation, then what should we do to make that happen? So what we're going to do is actually add weighing to the first random attribute, making sure that we can decide on a percentage of chance that that one is going to be of the same color as the core attribute. So what that means, if you go to the next, yeah. So we thought long about what that percentage should actually be. First, we were kind of settled on, like, yeah, maybe 50-50 chance, that happens. But 50% up from 33.3% is not that much experience-wise. So what we're actually going to try on PTS is making sure that the first random attribute is 100% chance the same color as the core attribute, which means that there's a 25% chance that you get the particular red attribute that you're looking for. So that's something that we're going to try on PTS, and what we would really like to have feedback on. And of course, we're also playing with it more to see how we need to adjust that. So that's a work in progress, but that's kind of how we've updated the system so that we can weigh these things more. And then, of course, for the second random attribute, if you go to the final slide, that is still, of course, the remaining 11 attributes. So it takes away the one that it was selected for the first random attribute, and then there's 11 left. So that means that there's a 9.1% chance for any of the others to appear here. And that can be a red one, that can be any of the other colors, basically.
So it's pretty much guaranteed.
So that's how we change the system and how we hope this
a red roll
addresses the rainbow rolls. That percentage is up for testing. So we'll see where that lands, and we appreciate the feedback that's coming from PTS.
Nice. Well, thanks, Nicky.
So one thing on the rainbow loot, I did read. I think Division came out and said that they are going to be adjusting that 100% due to some feedback, but they're still going to play with it and see where people want to go. But as of right now, if you got a weapon damage roll, right, a red roll, you would always get another red roll underneath, which would be crit chance, crit damage, headshot damage. And the same would go if you got armor. Well, then you would either get health, armor regen, one of the blues. If you got skill tier, then you would get a yellow roll. So that's what they wanted to do. I think they're going to tweak it a little bit for TU11 unless they stick to this. But that's what I've heard.
Appreciate the PowerPoint. If people are obviously going to have follow-up questions about it, please do let us know. And again, as Nicky says, this is going to be in the PTS, so feedback is going to have to come in.
So I mean, if people were complaining about Rainbow
I already
Loot,
see.
That's it. And I'm going to talk to you guys in a second about
the
Rainbow
game.
Loot.
I understand it can be polarizing. I see.
So we'll talk about it in one second.
Scott's Gaming 6DG in chat says, "I am liking this," and the next message is Qua saying, "I hate this." So we understand that these things can be polarizing, but please give it a shot on the PTS and let us know what you think.
And I'll tell you
that experience.
I'll tell you in a second what my thoughts are.
All right. I'm sure some questions will come in. Demetrius is saying, when is the PTS? We do not have a date for that yet, but it is soon.
So no date on the PTS?
Are there any other questions that you've seen, Johan, that would be important to look for? Ryan J122 is saying, what about named items? Nicky, there's no impact to name items, or?
That's a good question, because it kind of depends on. I'm not an expert on the exact, item generation system, so somebody else who can explain this better. But I think it kind of depends on where on the item is the perfect stat, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those will remain the same. If there's a named item, it will always roll its perfect stat.
Okay. Sue Bevix, we did mention earlier that Bruce was going to be in this stream, but he is busy getting changes into TU11. He does have some additions and changes to things that will affect PvP, and we'll talk about those in an upcoming stream. But that will be once we have all of that information, so we can actually share that with you as the notes for that PTS do find their way to us. Okay.
I did see another question in chat about how this affects gear sets.
Mm-hmm.
Because gear sets only have one extra stat, right? So that means that that particular stat will be of the same color as the attribute if we stick to that 100%. But of course you have a recal, and there's fewer stats on a gear set. So that still allows you to change one of those things to a more hybrid setup if you would want to do that.
So it is going to affect
I also saw a good
too.
question from our buddy.
I know
DJ
hybrid
Pickle.
players are worried,
doesn't that
and that's
mean
what I'm
now
going to
that
talk to you guys
skill
about.
tier will be overrolled compared to blue and red, or I think maybe means like overrepresented in rolls compared to blue and red, as yellow doesn't worry about the core now. Blue and red still has three primary stats to distribute. Is there anything that we have on that?
I mean, to a degree, but also the way that the loot system works is that it always decides on a certain average. So yes, there is of course a difference between, deciding on an average for 3 attributes compared to 2 attributes, but there is still a lot of variation in those two attributes that remain on skill tier items. Mm-hmm. So it's not that they necessarily become more powerful because more power goes to the remaining stats, but it's just like, 2 stats are rolled, and of course for skill tier items it's always been the case that you kind of just need one of these these stats to God roll, and then you can recal the other one. So they've kind of always been the odd one out, and we think that this solution kind of at least improves the perception and the quality of these items. So.
Cool. All right, do keep your questions coming in. We're going to be here for a little bit longer. So Johan and Nikki, keep an eye out in chat, and we will see if there's anything else we can answer. I do want to talk about what is one of those changes that comes into a title update that seems like a little sneaky one, but I personally think it has quite a big impact, and I want to talk about the thing that we called agnostic mods.
Agnostic mods. So that's
Nikki,
the
do you want
mods,
to talk about
kind of like a generic, I think,
the
generic
reason,
mods a lot.
From
But
a
we'll
game
listen
design
to what he
perspective
says.
as to why those changes needed to be made?
I believe that's how it works.
Yeah, it has to, like, it's kind of twofold. One of them is more flexibility in your builds, so you can decide what to make and that you're not limited by, you know, I have a red build and all my mod slots are red as well, so I can only use red mods, while I would really like to, you know, have some additional armor or explosive resistance or whatever you want. The other thing is that there was kind of some, you know, some hidden knowledge that you needed to have about how these items were rolled. For example, you have the Hannah Yu mask, which is a skill-based item, but also kind of set up to be a bit hybrid by giving it a red mod slot. And so there are items that have a fixed mod slot color, and there are items that just roll one, and that knowledge is not like public to anyone per se, right? You'll find out through experience, but it's kind of, you need to know that. So if you're looking for this, you know, completely yellow Hannah Yu mask, then it's going to cost you a recal to make that slot yellow, and that of course makes it more difficult to get the rest of your item up to what you want it to be. So that's kind of why we're going to what are basically generic gear mod slots.
See, generic
and
gear
that
mod
means
slots.
that they basically they don't have a color anymore.
Exactly.
So
Same
they're
thing.
just
So instead of having to use red, yellow,
gray
blue,
now,
you can put whatever you want
and
there.
you can put whatever mod you want.
Kind of like a
in
generic
there.
mods that we
And
had
this
at the
is
very
retroactive.
beginning.
So all
People
of your
used to
items
use
that
those,
had a
and then they
colored
nerfed them.
slot are now generic. And if you had recaled that particular thing on the item, the recal mark will be removed, so the item doesn't count as recalibrated anymore, and you'll actually also be refunded the materials that you spent on that. And as you can see in the next slide, basically if you now go into your list of mods, it will just show you all the different mods that you have of all the different colors, because you can just put in there what you want.
So I think that's a really good idea.
All right, so yeah,
helps flexibility with your builds.
Kind of
people who are trying to make creative builds.
Small changes.
Because a mod, I think a mod shouldn't really affect that.
I see a lot of
I feel like
a lot of
attributes
pop
should be more.
champs. It's I like when that happens. That feels good. Okay. Damn, I did it wrong. My bad. Here we go. All right. Cool. Again, do let us know what you think of this change. I'm all for it.
And I think they're almost wrapping this up right now.
But I am bringing some news from Bruce, who is doing changes to gear mods, most notably the blue ones. We're doubling all of the resistance percentages for the resistance mods, so they'll be more powerful. That is also retroactive, so it will just be doubled for you what you had.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And there will also be 2 new resistance stats, resistance mods, or stats on the mods, which are for ensnare and for confusion.
Like T11 is gonna have a lot of changes.
You're gonna be busy, Johan.
Obviously, yesterday you have the next cycle in the season, so the 2 last targets become available. So you have Titan and you have the prime target Hornet. They're both now available to actually hunt down in the game.
You know, I need to get on this.
If you take down all 4 man-on targets plus Hornet, the prime target, you then unlock the repair trap skill, which is very much cool. I think that Image might have some gameplay footage of it that I will show in a bit.
I do. If you haven't seen it, I will show you right now what that looks like. Nice and green.
Yes. So as you can see,
that's actually pretty cool.
It's repairing away. Definitely looking forward to that one. And
That's
You
pretty
know,
sick.
as always with new targets becoming available, you have the double XP event for the next week where you can get some levels at twice the speed. So, you know, take advantage of that, jump in and participate in the manhunt. On top of that, Hornet himself can be found in the Tidal Basin Stronghold, so it's a reworked version of the Tidal Basin mission. And I hope you enjoy the fight against him as the, you know, climax of the season or whatever you might call it.
You guys have been awesome today at giving us great questions. I do want to go over to some agent highlights.
So that looks like
because
that's
to
it,
celebrate.
right? So I'm going to lower this down and then just talk to you guys a little bit. So what I really wanted to talk to you guys about was the thing about rainbow rolls that sometimes I know probably worries me and worries other players who like creating hybrid builds is when you get rid of all the rainbow rolls, it might actually hurt some of those hybrid players, right? Like some people like to run different players, and then some people want to run all red rolls, so they're looking for them. But I feel like if they eliminate it completely, if they do that 100% stat roll, I feel like hybrid builds will be harder to make in the future if they ever come back. So that's just my whole thought process on rainbow rolls, and then eliminate them completely. So if they have a weapon damage roll, you always get a red roll, then I mean, it might be tough to make those hybrid builds if you're trying to get something that's, you know, red, blue, yellow. And some players like playing like that. So that's why you just have to keep those players in mind. But definitely increase it a little bit so we don't get it as often, right? I agree with that 100%. So, but yeah, this is it. This is the state of the game. They actually gave us some pretty cool news. We have that new PvE game mode. The new mod slot, pretty much a generic mod slot. So you can put that anywhere you want. So like when we had generic mods and we could put that anywhere, well now it's just a generic mod slot. Now we can put the red, blue everywhere. So some pretty cool stuff. I want to know what you guys think about this. I think the game is going in the right direction. It's definitely getting improved. I really want to see what this PvE mode has, what kind of replayability it has, see if people actually enjoy it. And I still think we need a PvE, PvP mode, something like survival in the Division 2. And hopefully in the future we get something like that. But that's it, guys. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I'll see you guys in the next Division 2 video. Until then, Nothing But Skills is out.